Well, hello, everyone. It is March the 14th, 2023. It's Pi Day, and what a treat to be on a Zoom call with two veterans of Powell, Wyoming, who have been best friends forever. And have been in the process. This is Wes Fryer and Matthews. We might as well introduce ourselves. So I'm Wes Fryer, and I'm in Matthews. I'll pass the baton to Dad.
What state though?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm in North Carolina. Everyone doesn't know Matthews.
Okay, and I'm in the middle of the country. This is Tom Fryer in the middle of the country in Manhattan, Kansas.
And number three is joining from Mountain Country, Mountain Standard Time Zone, Dave Bonner, Powell, Wyoming, where this all started.
And we even yes. And we even managed to get 3 time zones to work. So just having done some oral history, I thought today, because I listened to an entire, I think 43 or 48 minute interview that our daughter did with Dad, probably 9 years ago, or maybe it wasn't that long ago. Anyway, 4 years ago, and it was so great. And I had this thought. I said, man, I wonder if Dad and Dave would do a talk to, tell about Powell and growing up. And as soon as I said that to Dad today, he said, I'll call Dave. Maybe we can do it tonight. So here we are.
Well, I'm delighted. Let's launch.
All right. So where do we begin? The thing I heard from my mother was that there was a photograph at some point of both of you going to first grade, headed off together. And that you all had just always, you'd been friends forever. So where does the relationship begin? When do you all remember? Do you remember first grade? And when do you all remember life together?
Let me tell you where that began. That was Bernard Street. We lived in the same block.
300 block
of North Bernard. Tom on the east side of the street and me on the west side of the street. So when we walked off to school in the first grade, literally, our departure was from the same neighborhood, the same time. Yes.
So maybe we should go back even further, because for folks who are listening to this, and we're gonna share this, because who knows what ancestors of Bonners and Fryers and others may listen. Where is Powell, Wyoming, and how did your respective families end up in Powell?
Tom, you tell.
Well, no,
you bring the Fryers together.
Most of this I defer to Dave because he's the senior citizen.
Oh, but you all were in different. You were in different families. Oh, so that's that's how it goes.
He outranks me by a couple months, so go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was born. I'm not a native Wyomingite. I am 82 years of Wyoming, and but I was a year old, born in Southern California, Los Angeles County, right. Covina, California. My mother and father, my dad was from Butte, Montana. He wanted to go back to the mountains, and he worked for Glendale Tire and Rubber and Tire Company in the Pasadena area. He had an uncle who lived in Grable, Wyoming, Tom, and he had a Bonner's store. How is that for coincidence? And so my dad contacted his uncle in Grable, Wyoming, and wanted to know if there would be any chance for him to come out and work for him, with him, and learn the small department store trade. And that's what launched the Bonners of Southern California back to mountain time. And that would have been probably 1941, late 1941. And after Dad worked with his uncle in Grable, Wyoming for a couple years in a, quote, Bonner store, he heard about the Shoshone Reclamation Project, Powell, Wyoming being the center, and the possibilities, but more than that, that was a real coming area of Wyoming, and they needed businesses, and they needed to develop a business community. And he took his 2 years of training at Grable, Wyoming, and moved us to Powell. And so that's how I got to 82435.
And Dad, I know there's a Montana connection too. Wasn't Aunt Marge born in like Havre, Montana or something? And did your parents come from Havre to Powell, or what was how did they end up in Powell?
Yeah, actually, of the four members of my family, my dad was born in South Dakota. My mother in Nebraska. Marge was born in Montana, and I was born in Powell. So, but when my dad graduated pharmacy school from South Dakota State, and I think it was 1922. My folks were both born in 1903, which I remember that very well. But and my dad was a pharmacist and started up in Montana, Havre. I think they spent a year or two in Butte. Even the Fort Peck Dam was being built out in eastern Montana, and Dad worked there, and Mom and Marge had to stay back. But anyway, when they moved down to Powell was well, in fact, Wes, when you interviewed me, the date that was mentioned was 1934, and that's fairly close. Mom's sister, Mariah Matthews, had a drugstore, the Daily Drug, and she needed another pharmacist, and so that's what brought my folks to Powell in the 30s. And then after a couple of years, Dad took over or bought Mariah out, and it became Fryer's Pharmacy. And then, like Dave, I was born in 1940, so that's a brief history there.
And one thing I didn't know from that interview with Sarah, Dad, was that your parents had built the house on Bernard.
Yes. How about you, Dave? Was your house? Did you build your house, or was it already there?
Well, we lived in a home in the same block that with Tom in the Tom 200 North Bernard, and
300 block. Yeah,
we lived in a home that was existing.
Okay.
Then we moved west in Powell and into another old home. So we've lived in a number of locations in Powell, but we started together in Bernard on Bernard Street.
So what memories do you all have of elementary school days in Powell, Wyoming? And how is that different than, let's say, life in the 21st century in 2023? Because didn't you all have like phone numbers of like 3 digits or something?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can't remember your phone number, Tom. I think I called it a lot.
I remember both of ours. Our store number was 103, and that was our license plate on the car for a number of years. Right. And then our home phone was 220. But yeah, so
what do you? No, go ahead.
I dialed that 103, I think, or quite a bit.
And you do mean dial, don't you? You don't mean touch tone.
No.
Well, what I remember about elementary, of course, we only had one elementary, one junior high, one high school. So we initially all started at what was East Side, and they were all on about 2 city blocks, all right together. And I don't remember teachers at all. But then when we were in the 4th grade, they built a brand new elementary out west at Parkside. And Dave and I were among the groups that got to go out to Parkside Elementaries.
Yeah, we were the first class. We were 4th graders in a 4-grade elementary school, a brand new school. We were the we had the maiden run in Parkside Elementary.
Yep.
Do you remember any sports or any activities? Did you all play baseball, or any memories of anything standing out in elementary?
Well, we played baseball all the time.
Little League, then, well, they didn't have, I don't remember Babe Ruth. I think it was Little League, and after we turned 13, we joined a Legion Ball. So
I've got a great picture, and you probably have a copy of it as well, of our of a 10-year-old baseball team that went and played in a tournament in Billings, Montana. And in our uniforms, the Powell, Wyoming uniform was a white T-shirt to stencil, and I think I did a lot of stenciling in my garage. But those were that was the extent of uniforms we had in those days. It was our own hand concocted T-shirts.
So how many people graduated in your high school class, and how tight of a community you all? I remember hearing steaks about reunions with ribeye steaks cooked cowboy style over open fires. And I remember hearing good stories about Powell High School reunions. But how big was that class? And it is true, isn't it, that you all have remained pretty close as far as maintaining those connections?
Well, it is very true, Wes. Our class was, I'm going to say 98, Tom. We were just right under the 100 mark. We did not get to 100. I think we were 98. Yep. And graduated in 1958. And at that time, there was an established Powell High School Alumni Association. So as soon as we graduated from high school, we were eligible, and we were admitted to membership in the Powell High School Alumni Association, which every summer had a high school reunion of all class. And in fact, at our Powell Tribune, we've done some research on this. I think there is one other high school in the country, mid-America, Illinois somewhere, that has a longer consecutive string of all class reunions than Powell.
Wow.
Yeah, we are something like 140 or 100, nearing 150 consecutive meetings of the all class Powell High School reunion.
And Dave was on that committee for more years than he can remember.
Yeah, had my stint. And
so there's some other memories besides the first grade picture. I seem to remember somebody had shotguns in the back of the car and would sometimes go hunting, either before or after school. And Dad, you had a dog. Dave, did you have a dog too?
I had a dog. I had a black lab named Mo. And Tom, your retriever was of what breed?
Chesapeake Bay Retriever. Name was Tony.
Yep.
But you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead to high school. It's as far as our classmates, like Dave said, we were less than 100, but we were also unique to have 3 sets of twins in our class too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But and that class, Wes, remains very, very close. We each year we join with the all class reunion, but we have our own, and that's our own Powell High School reunion the night before the main reunion. And I think we all come for our own class reunion, and that's the highlight.
But pitchfork steaks are so unique. Elaborate on that.
Well, when Wes mentioned he's heard about steaks over the campfire, that is absolutely a pitchfork steak done by the husband of one of our classmates, Beth and Paul Rodriguez. Paul is the master of actually sticking steaks into the fire on a pitchfork and doing them up absolutely perfectly. And that's we don't have to guess our menu at our gathering. It's going to be pitchfork steaks.
But wait a minute though. Didn't he cook it in hot oil? And then
that hot oil is on the fire, actually on the open fire, over the open fire. And
they only cook for just a couple minutes, even just to get them medium.
Yeah.
That's Wyoming style, I guess.
Yeah. Where the men are men and the plumbing's outdoors.
Yes, I bet there's a few statements like that. All right. So in today's day, usually, hunting right after school is not, was that just like a one-time thing? And was this for pheasants or quail, or what kind of birds were? I remember also hearing about having to kill snakes on the sand greens, of Powell. So it was a wild place.
we would go hunting after school, a lot of pheasant hunting. Tom and I would go for longer stints down on the river duck hunting. Tom, was it your dog or my Mo who retrieved a duck in the middle of the Shoshone River and took it to the other side, dropped it, and then came back without the duck?
Yeah, I think that was Mo. Yeah,
That
I'm
was
pretty
Mo.
sure.
He was damn proud of himself for getting that bird. Just took it to the wrong side of the river. But we did a lot of pheasant hunting after school, and I can remember Tom and I have a great friend, classmate Ron Ney, and we took Ron Ney with us one time, and he was absolutely intrigued with the way we hunted pheasants. We tracked him. We saw a big old rooster and it hopped in a ditch, and it was over. Never to be seen again, except it left its footprints. And so Tom and I tracked that. Nay was absolutely in disbelief that we would ever. And we got the bird up again, and tracking him down the bottom of a ditch, his fresh his footprints. Remember that, Tom?
Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah.
Now, geographically, one of the things I remember about Powell is Polecat Bench. So is that, well, tell us about the geography. You mentioned the Shoshone River and the I guess the reclamation project, because irrigation really was what it still is, isn't it? A heartbeat of the area.
Absolutely. Powell was a camp town. Bureau of Reclamation built the Shoshone Project, 90,000 acres of irrigated farmland, bringing water from the Shoshone River through a whole series of canals built as a reclamation project. And so farming is truly big, and irrigation is the water turned a sagebrush plain into green, productive farming fields, and it's that way today. We don't have nearly the same pheasant habitat, though, Tom, because everybody's gone to these darn plastic pipes to transport their water, so they don't need the ditches, and we don't have all the weeds that we used to have to crash. But we are a farm town, and Bureau of Reclamation roots. Powell was established, by the way, in 1909. That's when Powell was chartered in the state of Wyoming as a town. So do your quick math, Tom. In 2023, we're 114 years old.
Yeah, 114. Yeah.
You're 2 years younger than Oklahoma and the little town of Indian Trail, which is right by us. I was just looking at that as far as the centennial book. So you're coming up on 125.
Yeah.
Powell was named for a explorer by the name of John Wesley Powell. So, and then maybe fast forwarding to World War II days, but Powell and Cody are the two principal communities in what's called Park County, and Midway is we called Heart Mountain. And in World War II, when after the Pearl Harbor, the Japanese were, of course, taken off the West Coast into, and they weren't concentration camps, they were relocation camps. But Heart Mountain was one of, 10 or 12, Dave? Is that about right?
That's about right.
But anyway, when it was at its height in either 43 or 44, it was the second largest community in the state of Wyoming. The only larger cities were Casper and Cheyenne. So they had just lots of people there. And Dave's older brother Bob has written about that, and there's some stories. The communities were kind of split, and this would be late 44, 45 when things got better, and they let the Japanese come into Cody or Powell. And the way I remember the story, my dad had the Rexall drugstore, and he was for letting them come into town. Well, our mayor at the time, by the name of Beaver, had lost a son in the Pacific to the Japanese, and he was anti bringing him. So our communities were split, but I don't think there were any really serious incidents, but it was kind of tense, I guess I'd say.
Well, there was some tension, and there were some all too obvious signs hanging in some store windows. No Japs. I mean, that was it hurt to see that. But out at the Heart Mountain relocation camp today, they've built a modern, and not a modern, but they've remodeled a couple of the old barracks into a wonderful
museum.
Yeah, it is a museum. And on the wall, there is a sign from, there's a letter from Al Fryer, Fryer's Pharmacy, inviting Japanese to come into the Fryer's Pharmacy. And I pointed that out, or I mentioned that to Tom. That made me proud to see that on the wall out at the museum out there today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you all to talk a little bit about like post high school and college days and all of that, because I think you all went to Wyoming together. But were you all Boy Scouts? I know Dad Dad was a Boy Scout. Were you a Boy Scout or?
Yeah, well, because rather than get into college, I was thinking of other activities.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of questions you guys could ask each other. I'm gonna run out of questions pretty quick.
And Boy Scouts was the key.
We were members of Troop 51, and the scoutmaster of Troop 51 Boy Scouts of America was my dad, and Tom and I were members of Troop 51 the same time. We had a number of our guys, Tom, were in that troop. My dad had us all over the mountains of Wyoming on pack trips, and we had some great times. We had great scouting experience. We really did.
And I could, some of I had a chance to go to Philmont one summer, and I was sharing a tent with somebody from Los Angeles, and being in a scout troop in the inner city, and I would compare what his experiences were with being in Northwest Wyoming in the mountains and fishing, and it was just awesome.
Were you all on the same
camping?
Were you all on the same patrol? Do you remember what patrol you were in, or any of those details?
Well, we sure were in the same patrol, and there were about 9 of us, 11 of us. Remember the Onsteins, Tom, and I think Gerald Caribou was in that patrol. It was just a lot of our good friends. And let's tie Heart Mountain camp into Boy Scouting, because very famously at the time in World War II, when the 10 to 13,000 Japanese were interned out at Heart Mountain, the Cody Boy Scouts went out. And one of the leading Boy Scouts at the time for Cody was Al Simpson, and he made friends with a young Japanese Boy Scout in the camp by the name of Norm Mineta. Later, the two of them to be reunited in Congress, Al in the U.S. Senate, and Norm Mineta, a congressman from California, all born out in the Heart Mountain camp. That friendship.
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing.
We had real camping experiences. They weren't just play experiences. When we went on a pack trip, it was a couple nights out in the hills, and bring your canteen and your cooking gear and your tent, and away we go.
Before we lose our teenage years, it wouldn't be complete if we didn't brag a little bit about sports. We had a I'll call them an awesome class of athletes that led us to some rather remarkable things. So.
Well,
and what you've shared this before, but there weren't quite as many sports at that time. So we're talking football, basketball, track. Was that pretty much the schedule, or were more than that?
no, that would be in the fall of the year. It was football, and then went right into basketball or wrestling. It was at the same time. So there was wrestling also a winter sport, but then from there flowed right into spring and track and field.
But we didn't play baseball till the summer. There was no tennis. There was no soccer, things that kids are doing now. So
yeah,
right.
Now,
well, and
Tom, let me just put in this plug for your dad and my great friend Tom. He quarterbacked the state championship Powell High School Panthers that senior year. Great memories. And then Tom, you might have won the mile too that year on another state championship track team. Did you win the mile?
No, I did as a junior. I did, and then what kept me from going out senior years, I had my appendix out, so I didn't have to run the mile when I was a senior.
Because didn't your football coach make you do that basically?
Yeah, because they were all the same. If you wanted to do football or basketball,
same coaching staff. Yep.
Yeah.
They all, and you were expected.
Yeah, you heard this before, Wes, but I wasn't any good at field events. So Powell High School, I wasn't fast enough for sprints. So Louis Conkey said, "Fryer, you're going to be a miler."
Well, Dave, you can confirm this, but I think I remember, Dad, you said quarterbacking football, and then wasn't he was a pitcher, and how was he as a basketball player?
Catcher. Yeah, he had an arm, Wes, and I mean a hell of an arm. I played second base. Why? Shortest throw in the diamond. I had some trouble getting it from second to first sometimes. No wing, but Tom had one.
Now, where would you all travel to play sports? What were the towns? Obviously, you played Cody, but what were some other towns that you all would travel to?
Tom, introduce Wes to the Bighorn Basin Conference and tell Wes how that was peopled.
Because it would, if you divide the state of Wyoming in quarters, the northwest corner was basically the Bighorn Basin. So Cody was about 30 minutes to the west, Lovell was about 30 minutes to the east, and then go south to Grable and Basin and Worland and Thermopolis. Our longest trips in the conference were not in the Bighorn Basin. It was Riverton and Lander. And I remember
they were members of the conference. That's right.
Yeah, and I remember when we played them in football there, the game would be over and we wouldn't be showered and on the bus. And it seemed like by the time we made about a 4-hour bus trip home, it was almost getting light Saturday morning. So we traveled a lot.
And you had to hope that there wasn't a rock slide in the Wind River Canyon. You had to get through that canyon to get back into the basin. Yeah. But those towns were just, you became quite familiar with people from all those communities because we were really pretty tight in the Bighorn Basin Conference.
Similar high school sizes or some differences as far as numbers?
Well, Powell, Cody, Worland, and maybe Thermopolis were Riverton and Lander were all the big ones, and then Lovell, Basin, Grable might have been a little bit smaller, but my gosh, Grable was pretty stout, weren't they, Tom?
Yes, yeah. Especially in the summertime, playing on that dirt field, it's 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Did anybody tend to dominate the sports as far as towns?
Well, in the years in which we were Powell Panthers, Powell Worland was a classic rivalry on the football field, and I don't think we beat Worland until maybe we were seniors. Tom, I don't know if we beat them on the way in.
We lost the first 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, Worland was just mighty. and that ended in the state championship year.
And maybe we'll put a link in the description, but I seem to remember Biff Beck, a classmate, resurrected some old film, didn't he? Of maybe some of those games, semifinal and final games, something like that.
I used to have a copy of our game the semifinals down in Rawlins, and then at one of the state championship games too. That and I think it has survived the years.
I think Biff put it on YouTube. I'll have to look for that, but I seem to remember.
Did.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. So
yep.
You're sure right, Wes. Biff Beck was a Cody High School kind of audio-visual guy. He had access to lots of dark room and film production over there, and probably made copies for us all.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that.
Well, before we leave high school, were your parents friends? Did you all ever get together for dinner? And what was the relationships between your families?
Well, probably at least at church, church dinners and all. I don't remember actually neighborhood dinners or picnics.
Did you go to you all went to the same church?
Which same church, Presbyterian Church, and of course our dads were both business owners, and were both in the Chamber of Commerce, and had that relationship in the business community, and we had marvelous times in the Presbyterian Church in what we called youth fellowship. That was every Wednesday night during the school year. Presbyterian Church really grew, didn't it, Tom? All our friends became Presbyterians on Wednesday night for youth fellowship. But our parents took turns, our mothers cooking and providing the meal. Mm-hmm. And we had just a marvelous time in youth fellowship. That maybe more than 1 year, but certainly that senior year. Gosh, it was just great fellowship.
Did you all do 8th grade communicants class? Was that a thing back then, or when did you go join the church or whatever and kind of do a class? Was that something that happened in middle or high school?
We did it,
not
but
in a formalized way. I think we all did it individually. Okay. I think I joined the church, Tom, when we were still in middle school or high school. But we were not.
I don't have a firm date.
There wasn't a communicants class that I'm familiar with those today.
Did I'm sure that there was no submersion for baptism though. Was that we were sprinkling in the Presbyterian church, or was there?
I've got.
In fact, our Boy Scout troop was sponsored by Troop 51 was sponsored by Union Presbyterian Church.
Okay, and is that church still open today in Powell?
Oh,
yes, it is.
Right there in the corner.
Yeah.
Kitty corner from the post cops. I got 2 quick golf stories before we move on. You've mentioned rattlesnakes, and that has come up in the family before, but this was at the old golf course with sand greens, and it was out west of Powell. Basically, it was sagebrush, and like I say, in fact, I did not play on grass greens till I was in high school. Because we just had sand greens. But I remember, I think I was just following my dad around at I don't know what age, and he had teed off and went out to approach his golf ball, and here's about a 4 or 5 foot rattlesnake coiled up by his golf ball. So he calmly sets his clubs down, goes back to the green, gets the green sweep, which he used to smooth it down, and killed the rattlesnake, and we continued playing. And I've used that story several times of besides men and men and the plumbing's outdoors, we played golf with rattlesnakes. So.
Well, and old habits don't sometimes persist, and because I remember you teaching me to always carry your iron with you when you're going out in the grass to look for your ball, because you never know what you might find out there.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, even in Kansas. The other story, and we've mentioned Dave's older brother Bob. we were playing together, and I still have a vivid memory of this, that Bob did have a little bit of temper, and
Temper.
on this one particular hole, he kind of muffed his shot, and I just kind of took off and went to find my ball, so I was ahead of him, and all of a sudden he throws his golf club, and it wraps around. Luckily,
Your back.
yeah, my back, and it snapped right off. Now, if the head had hit me in the spinal cord, it might have been different. But I still
that was not one of my brother Bob's finer moments. Not at all.
So
Wes,
much for my.
When you ask about golf, and Tom was telling about our early days of golf, we had sand greens, oiled sand greens, and you get on the green, and with a rake, you would draw a line, sweep a path to the hole. And I was still a terrible putter.
Now, what is an oiled sand green? I haven't heard of that.
Well, that sand green was just, it was black because they would spray oil on it to help hold the sand together, and it raked really nicely. And so, yeah,
wow.
Oil sand greens.
But I always blame my terrible putting on starting out on sand greens, because I never was a very good putter. I mean, on sand greens, you really had to blast the ball to get it up there.
No kidding.
Okay, so you're making me think of weather. Tell me some stories about Powell weather and what you remember growing up. Did you all, I know the wind blows out there. Do you all get any snowstorms? Were there big thunderstorms? What stood out as far as weather that you remember growing up in Powell?
Snow day proclaimed by the school. Shut the school down. No school. God, we love snow days.
And
how much snow would you need in Powell in those days to have a snow day?
Well, it's primarily determined by the buses. If the buses, we had one of the biggest bus systems in the state, and especially buses going up to Elk Basin, because a couple good friends, Stan Smith and Tom Barber, lived up there, and there were more than one.
Lived out there in the early years.
That's right. Yeah, there was more than one time I remember Tom Barber staying with us because they couldn't get home.
But snow days, no school. Those were to be celebrated.
Were those rare or very common?
There weren't enough of them as far as we were concerned. No, we'd have some every winter. There'd be some.
You still remember the biggest blizzard I remember, and I think it was 48. 49. Yeah.
Fabled.
And I remember, and of course, you remember that we had a detached garage that sat at the back of of our lot, and we had our drift in our driveway. Of course, I was not very big then, but it seemed like it was at least 4 or 5 feet tall. We didn't have a snow blower. Dad handed me the shovel and said, "Well, it might take you a couple days to get it cleared off till we can get our car out." But
one more thing to tie in winter weather in Wyoming that we lived in, and Boy Scouts. We had a number of winter camp outs, Wes, where we would go and we learned, my gosh, we would go out into the worst of the snow and build set tents up and build a fire and gather firewood and do it all to exist in winter weather.
And as I recall, sometimes your pride is even stronger when you've learned to weather the elements and have fun and enjoy that kind of weather. Okay, that made me think of driving too. Tell me about what you remember about your cars that your parents had and driving. Did you have driver's ed? Who taught you how to drive? Was it 3 on the tree, or what? What was the driving shifting situation?
Well, I can remember after the war when we had a 49. We ordered and bought new a 49 Ford as a family. That was a really prized vehicle. then we went to Buicks, and it seemed like the Bonner family always had a Buick. Can't remember, Tom, what was parked in the Fryer garage.
Well, in later years, Buicks as well. But the first car I remember was after World War II, and it was a Frazier. You know, and when the Kaiser Frazier company was building cars, they looked like the tanks that they built during the Korean War. I mean, they were not very aerodynamically clean, but anyway, yeah.
Did you all learn to drive at 16, or because you guys worked in the summer and stuff? Did you drive tractors or something, or when did driving enter your picture for you guys?
Well, we were driver license eligible at 15 in Wyoming then, and at 15 I needed a rather large puffy pillow on my seat to see over the steering wheel. But I was so anxious to get that driver's license, got it right at 15, and got a big pillow and got by rather nicely. Our own cars. I had a car. Remember, Tom? The high school car was a something 53 Chevrolet with a left-hand gear shift. And I'd drive around and pick up everybody to go to school. Yeah. So Gary Penley could have a smoke before school. But no, those were fun.
What about you, Dad? Did your dad teach you to drive? And what was it, a stick shift or some kind of a manual transmission car?
I think they were all automatics then, as I recall then. And of course, as I've shared with you before, I didn't have my own car really until I was in college. And first 3 years at the Air Force Academy, you couldn't have a car. So when I finally had one my senior year, I bought a Corvair Monza with 4 on the floor. So
that's right. All right. Well, what do y'all remember about graduation? And then what happened after Powell High School graduation?
Well, you're talking to the valedictorian of the class for starters.
Well,
that was not me.
Let's complete the picture. The valedictorian and salutatorian of Powell High School Class of '58, Tom and I, and that's the way we left Powell High School. And
did that mean you got to give a speech at commencement?
Oh yeah, I had to do that.
No iPhones and video at that time, so we're not no record.
And then, Wes, you would know this, but before, it continued. Our relationship continued at the University of Wyoming, where Tom and I were roommates and lived together at Weill Hall at the University of Wyoming, and then together pledged Sigma Chi fraternity in our freshman year, went active in Sigma Chi. And I remember, Tom, the influence of one Steve Fryer. Do you remember that in our rush and going Sigma Chi?
The night before, called to California that convinced me to be a Sigma Chi.
Yeah.
And in fact, Steve just had a birthday, and he was born in March of '38. So he's a couple years older than I am. Yeah, he sure is. You know, and my recollection, I saw a lot more of Dave the fall semester, because in the spring, he met this very attractive young lady from Evanston, Wyoming, by the name of Diane Elmer. And, that led to a marriage. And in fact, it was you were already graduated, I think, because I'm trying to think. I know I went to your wedding in Evanston. I remember. I can't remember.
You came to the wedding after an Air Force Academy summer trip to Europe. You brought back the most humongous bottle of champagne. I don't know how you ever got it back.
A magnum of champagne. I got it.
Yeah, it was a magnum bottle of champagne. And we were married, Wes, Diane and I were married after our junior year at the University of Wyoming. So we lived in married student housing our senior year. And Diane's job, every time the Air Force Academy came to Laramie to play the University of Wyoming and a contingent of cadets would come, Tom would send a list of the guys that needed dates, and Diane would oblige and get dates for all the cadets.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Yeah,
Back in the days before there were females, though. That's right.
yeah.
Well, what did
Yeah.
you did everyone did ROTC at that time? So, but what I remember hearing Dad say is like everyone went Army except he went Air Force. Did you sign up for Army ROTC, Dave, at the
I was
University of Wyoming?
Army ROTC. Yeah.
Now,
And
why did you
I
do
had,
why did you do that, sitting as you are on a call with a couple Air Force guys?
no, I don't. I guess I didn't have the influence then, but it was what a terrible uniform we had to wear too. I liked that Air Force blue uniform that the guys had. But no, I don't know why I signed up for Army ROTC, and I did. And here's my famous memory from Army ROTC. I would shave maybe once a month. On inspection day in full uniform in Army ROTC, I got a gig for not having shaven, which I don't know how you ever found a whisker on me. But that was my memory of Army ROTC.
They could find it. The inspectors could find it. So did you do that for 4 years then, or how did that work?
No, obligation of land grant of our University of Wyoming was 2 years of ROTC for all men.
Okay, all right.
So it was a 2-year.
So what are your recollections of Dad applying to the Air Force Academy and having this wild idea about, leaving you in Laramie and going down to this place called Colorado Springs? Or actually, did you go to Denver first, Dad, or did you start in Denver, or did you?
No.
You were in Colorado Springs.
The class ahead of us were the last ones in Denver at Lowry. So,
what do you remember about that, Dave?
I remember this. Your father kept a very, very closely held secret for a long time until he had that appointment. He was in the process, and after he had an appointment, we were just absolutely delighted for him. And remember, Tom, we go out in the summertime and minded our P's and Q's because by gosh, we were not going to, we had an Air Force cadet on the way, and we had a great time that last year, but had to say goodbye to Tom then, and not goodbye, but yeah, I don't know what time you left, Tom.
Probably the end of June, early July, something like that.
Yeah, June 26th is when we entered. So, and Dave, just to kind of wrap this part up, but this year, of course, I graduated in '63, and if you do the math, that was 60 years ago. And 10 years ago, when we had our 50th reunion, we said 2 things: no more football and no more stairs. So we're, instead of the fall, we're going out this summer in August, and it'll tie in. It's a 3-day reunion, and then we're going to be taking Angie's ashes out, and the cemetery out there's a national cemetery, and so we leave the ashes there, and then I have to sign my life away to verify that, in fact, when my time comes, I'll be buried together with her. So,
yeah, circle of life.
And
before we leave the Air Force Academy thoughts, yeah, I didn't have Tom any longer on an everyday basis, but man, I am personally, but we and the closest friends were so proud of Tom.
Yep.
We went with him, and anyway, happy for him, proud of him. He was, Tom, was it the 5th class? What class were you in?
Yeah, we were the fifth class to graduate. So first one in Falcon Stadium. A lot of firsts, a lot of memories. So, and then of course Wes followed and graduating in '92, and then And in fact, this is very timely because his youngest daughter, Rachel, is at a prep school right now and just received a certificate from the superintendent welcoming her to the class of 2027. So she'll be a third generation now.
3 generations.
Yeah.
How that's terrific.
The ripple effects into history.
A lot of 2 generations, but not many 3 generations.
No, there wouldn't be. Absolutely.
So let's get reflective about Powell and growing up there. What would you all say were some of the best things about growing up in Powell in the 1940s and the 1950s? Besides snow days every once in a while and lots of brush in the ditches to provide some cover for needed pheasants.
For birds. It was a pretty carefree time. It was, and it was, we had a great class, great friends, and the life was pretty easy and pretty. It brought us together really in a way that will be forever. We played hard.
You bonded with that group very solidly.
Yeah, we played hard and we worked hard in our 12 years in the Powell school system. And by the way, wonderful schools. Really prepared all of us well in the Powell school system.
And I would just echo that. And I was thinking too, and the consistency. I mean, I've through the years have known some and not necessarily military families that have moved around. I can even think of one family that one of their kids went to, I think, 3 different high schools. And I mean, we had the consistency of 12 years there, which I think was one of many factors that led to this bonding. But then the teachers, I mean, in our school system, we were fortunate. The school district, there was oil and gas in the area. And Dave, I think it paid like 51% of the school taxes. So, I mean, we had just some top-notch teachers, and a good percentage of our class went on to college and graduated, and a lot of it is back to the excellent not only buildings and facilities, but teachers that we had too. And of course, this ties right in with what Wes and Shelley are doing there in North Carolina. I mean, they're dedicated teachers as well. So.
And that's what I want to go to next. So give you some time to think about this. A teacher impact story. So this could be a coach or it could be a teacher. And if you remember them by name, and it doesn't have to just be one, but is there a teacher or coach that stands out for you that you remember in Powell that, for whatever reason, really, made an impact and was somebody you remember?
Tom, you go ahead.
Okay, I'll name 2. The teacher would have been chemistry and physics teacher by the name of Louis Conkey, who was turned out to be a lifetime friend, very, very friendly with my parents as well. And then incidentally, he was our track coach too. So yeah, I mean, you didn't pull any punches with Louis, but with me being able to go on to college and get a degree in engineering, and of course physics and chemistry were very instrumental there. And then the other one was Keith Bloom. I mean, Keith was more of a friend of my Dick and Marge, but got to know him. Of course, he was our basketball coach, and the one thing I held against him is he wouldn't let us go skiing. He said, if you want to play basketball, you don't ski for me. So he didn't want to avoid those injuries. But and I still remember after his wife passed away, and he was I guess it was the nursing home and all. But I think the last time I saw him was within about a year of when he had passed on. So, and I know that was Ron Ney. I mean, Ron wouldn't come to Powell without seeing Keith Bloom. He made such an influence on all of us.
Well, he sure did, and those were two great teachers and great. I would salute both Louis Conkey and Keith Bloom as people that had a lot that I remember so fondly. And I had one more. I had an English teacher. I had a crazy English teacher by the name of Velma Biddle, and she taught me so much about words. She loved words, and she was sometimes a little crazy, but I liked her. I loved her really well. She lived in a long life and taught me lots.
And for those that
Well,
don't know, you went on to a career in journalism. So do you credit her with some of your trajectory of loving words and finding a career in journalism and newspapers?
Absolutely. I never had a formal class in journalism in high school. Never took anything in the way of journalism instruction until the university level. But I worked for the Powell Tribune. I wrote stories, covered all the sports for the Powell Tribune from the time I was 15 years old and high school freshman. I went right to the practice of journalism, not in a formal way, but I went right to work for the newspaper without ever having journalism class work. But I had Velma Biddle and words, and that meant so much to me. And yeah.
That's great.
well, and that doesn't surprise me a bit now. I was in the back of my mind where I think of it, and I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, but I also think of Bob Mize. I mean, he was kind of a character as well. I can't even remember what he taught.
Geometry.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, we had him for geometry. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a character.
Yeah. Among other things.
Yeah.
Dave, you may be late for dinner there. It looks like you may be needed. I'm not sure. What is something that you all know about each other that you can share that I might not know and that maybe other people don't know? You all know each other really, really well. In fact, I would say there's probably few people that have had a best friend, as long as you all have known each other. So is there any interesting fact, any interesting story that you remember about each other that we haven't talked about here and may be something that I haven't heard or that other people in our respective families may not know about the other?
Okay, Dave, your turn.
He's going to put him on the spot.
I don't know if we didn't call Tom. He was Benny.
What?
He was Mel. He was. We had nicknames, and nicknames were such a part of. And I just share that because I don't know if you've ever heard of us calling your father Benny or calling your father Mel. But those were just really closely held nicknames, and they were a kind of a signature for our close relationship.
Would those names change, interchangeably constantly, or would you have one for a while and then switch, or how did those change?
Well, our nicknames lasted, and I don't know if I was ever very proud of mine, but Mel and Ben.
Okay. I have never heard that before.
Okay.
That's a new one. Yeah.
That's lore that I share with you.
Very good. That's exactly what I was pursuing there. All right, Dad, your turn.
Well, I just think of the Bonner family, like in my situation, I had an older sister, Marge, who was 12 years old, who graduated from high school in 1946 in May, and I entered first grade in a couple months later. So, in a way, I was kind of an only child. But here's Dave with an older brother, and younger sisters and younger brothers, and I know I spent a long time not only in Powell at the Bonner home, but then you've heard stories about the Bonner cabin too, and we've been up there a number of times too, with a lot of very fond memories about that. So.
Okay. Well, you all may come up with some other.
One more thing before we go. How you mentioned Marge, Tom, and how much we think of her and how much we love Marge. She just made a wonderful contribution to the construction of the new Northwest College Student Center. Marge and I believe Dick were members of the very first class ever to attend Northwest College in Powell. And we're in the middle of a fundraising project that I'm leading in Powell, and Marge has made a significant contribution. And I want you guys to know how much that is appreciated, how much Marge is continuing the Northwest College, her life, Tom.
That's right.
Well, and my dad had been part of that board.
Yeah.
And like you say,
board member.
Dick graduated from high school in '44, went into the service, was in the Army Air Corps after basic, was up the road from me in Lincoln, Nebraska, about to pair up in a B-25 to go overseas when the war ended, and then used his GI Bill at Laramie. But like you say, before he went to Laramie, first class at Northwestern, they didn't even have buildings. They went to night school in the old high school. That was their.
I thought you were going to say they had tents.
Well, they probably did too. So, but anyway, yeah, they.
Well, hey, listen, this has been fun, and Wes, it was you, the organizer.
Well,
how great of you to do this!
I got one more question for you. I want you to put on your hats as grandfathers and fathers. So what's your wisdom to share? What is something you know now as well, because Dave, you have, how many grandchildren do you have? Do you have any great grandchildren?
No, I have six grandchildren.
Okay. So as a grandfather and a father, what is something you know now that you didn't know when you were graduating from Powell High School that is good to pass on? This is the wisdom question.
You can tell Wes has done this before.
See, ideally, I give these questions in advance, so you have time to think about it. But this is you're on the spot. But you can put you've done a good job passing the buck to each other, so you can tell Dad to go first.
Lead away, Tom.
Well, and yeah, you have 6, I have 5, and one of them has already graduated, but I'm thinking of the environment they're in right now, and of course they're all and this has a lot to do maybe with Wes and his technology, because we have a lot of family pictures through the years of everybody with their smartphones and technology and all that. Just the opportunities are available, that the hard work, and I guess, and again, my grandkids have heard this a number of times, that life is a series of forks in the road. And one of my bigger forks, as I reflect back, was my year at Laramie, and rather than staying there, I took the other fork, and the rest is history. And the good Lord has looked after me, so many times that I just feel very blessed. So,
well,
enough ram.
Absolutely, share every sentiment of that. You mentioned phones, Wes. I guess here's what I would, as a grandfather, want my grandchildren to know. Put that damn phone down sometimes when we're sharing it, when we're talking. I want to talk to you and not have to go have you torn away by that cell phone in your hand.
That's right. That's right. Well, forks in the road indeed, and sometimes forks lead to good steaks in Powell. So maybe we'll experience one of those fabled steaks here at some point. So. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to get together. And, you can tell it's something exciting when, I mentioned it to Dad and he said, I think we'll do that tonight. So
How about now?
There's no time like the present. So
Well, thank you for doing this, organizing it. Hey, and congrats to the third generation of Air Force Blue coming, Academy Blue on the way. I think that is true.
Yes. Well, we're proud of all of our kids, and we've learned that life takes a lot of turns and twists. But what you want to have is good friends and family with you, right? Because that's what makes the journey doable, and being able to look back with smiles on so many good memories. It's because of good friendships like you all have shared.
Well, it truly is, and it hasn't. I don't want to say it has been, because that almost ends it. It is a wonderful, wonderful, lasting, treasured friendship.
Yeah.
And here we are via technology in 3 different time zones, getting to sit around the virtual fire here. So it's a blessing.
And if the recording doesn't work, we can try it again sometime.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, well, thank you so much for doing it, and for thinking of it, and for getting Tom and I together with you, with sharing with you, Wes.
That's right. We even got through the password. So there we go. We persevered.